Welcome to The Explainer. Today, I want you to think about a really serious question. Is playing just some trivial childhood activity that we're supposed to just outgrow? Or is it actually the absolute secret to a life well lived? Well, today we're unpacking the core essay, The Art and Science of Play, by Dr. Susan Edwards, to really understand the ancient biology and the psychology behind our fundamental human need for fun. And from there, we'll pivot into the Theme 5 essay to explore what researchers are calling the deep, artistic soul of play. So we are going on a fascinating journey today, literally from the playground all the way to the pinnacle of human creativity. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Power of Wandering.
When we think of modern playfulness, a lot of us immediately picture Ferris Bueller, right? Turning an entire day of skipping school into this absolute masterpiece of play. And sure, he was physically wandering around the city, but the ancient philosopher Chuang suggests that true wandering actually goes way beyond just physical movement. It's a distinct, deeply engaged state of mind. In fact, Chuang's ancient parables act as a kind of clever game themselves, designed specifically to shake us out of our daily, rigid complacency. Because by embracing wandering, we basically stop being cogs in a machine, and instead we place ourselves into the greater, totally spontaneous gameplay of the universe. It's really about letting go of that strictly utilitarian mindset, where every single action has to have a productive outcome, and allowing ourselves the freedom to simply explore.
But here is a rather stark existential reality for you to think about. 4,000. Author Oliver Burkeman points out that if we live to be 80 years old, we only get roughly 4,000 weeks of life. That's it. That is the absolute limit of our time on this earth. We have this profound finitude and, honestly, very little control over how that time ultimately unfolds. And this creates a really interesting, playful, but kind of urgent tension. With only 4,000 weeks, is taking time to just wander and play simply wasting our precious, incredibly limited time? Or is engaging in play absolutely the only way to truly live and create actual meaning in those weeks?
Section 2. Defining the undefinable. So how do researchers actually go about defining something as spontaneous, fluid, and chaotic as play? Well, physician Stuart Brown, he's the founder of the National Institute for Play, argues that it's preconscious and preverbal, meaning it arises from these ancient biological structures that existed way before humans could even speak. And because it's so tricky to pin down, Brown actually identified 7 distinct properties. Think about the last time you were just absent-mindedly doodling in the margins of a notebook, or maybe tossing a ball back and forth with a friend. It was done entirely for its own sake, right? There was no obvious survival value, it was completely voluntary, and most importantly, it was fun. When we deeply engage in activities like this, we experience a sudden freedom from time and a massively diminished sense of self-consciousness. We just aren't worried about how we look. It's highly improvisational, and usually, once we start, we have an incredibly strong desire to just keep on playing.
And it turns out there is a massive biological and social payoff to those 7 properties. As the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle noted way back when, humans are by nature social animals, and sharing the experience of play physically changes our chemistry. Author Kate Sullivan points out that adults desperately need to play just to survive modern life. Play releases this flood of endorphins that actively counteract cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone. It boosts our energy, it sharpens our brain function, and it even elevates our language ability. And over time, it improves our sleep, builds interpersonal trust, and massively increases our creativity. Basically, it gives us the empathy and emotional resilience we need to navigate an increasingly complex world. It's essentially a biological reset button.
Section 3. The 6 Steps of Play.
Now, while the biology of play is super ancient, the psychological journey we experience when we play is actually highly structured. Intellectual historian Scott Eberle maps this out in a really fantastic 6-step process. To understand it, just imagine sitting down with your friends to learn a brand new, slightly complicated board game. First, there's anticipation. You're wondering what to expect, maybe feeling a little flutter of anxiety or curiosity as the board gets set up. Second comes surprise, right as you make an unexpected discovery or suddenly shift your perspective on how you're going to win. Third is pleasure, which is just the pure, unadulterated fun of the activity itself. Fourth is understanding, or things click and you finally acquire new knowledge about the game's hidden mechanics. Fifth is strength, that wonderful surge of self-confidence that comes from finally mastering the rules. And finally, the 6th step is poise. This is a beautiful sense of balance, grace, and contentment when the game is all over. It is a complete, deeply satisfying emotional arc.
Section 4. The Soul of Play.
And this brings us perfectly into the ideas explored in the Theme 5 essay. When we think of high art or extreme craftsmanship, we usually picture absolute rigid discipline. Like, think of the flawless, meticulously synchronized movements of professional ballet dancers. Every single step is calculated.
But contrast that with the completely unstructured, messy, totally hands-on joy of a kid just trying to figure out a complex puzzle. This juxtaposition brings up a really profound question. To what extent does play serve as a muse to evoke true craftsmanship? See, we often assume that great art is purely a product of strict discipline, but beneath all that rigor actually lies a foundation built entirely on the freedom, experimentation, and boundless curiosity of play.
Section 5. Play as the ultimate muse.
The incredible author Eudora Welty famously recalled her childhood experiences staring at the playful, oversized first letters of children's books. She realized that this playfulness created a totally unique reader voice inside her head. As she put it, it is human, but inward, the voice of the story or poem itself. It wasn't just her mother's voice reading to her anymore, it was the story actually coming alive from within. You see, play acts as a harbinger of these massive epiphanies. It's the exact spark that ignites our artistic desire and grants us the inner voice needed to create our own stories, art, and meaning. It proves that play isn't just about blowing off steam on the weekend. It is literally about awakening the soul.
And this dynamic builds incredibly across all of human history. Researchers like Reed examine how physical object play, like early humans banging sticks together, carving wood, or just experimenting with stones, literally drove human cognitive evolution and survival innovation. It was play that led to tool-making. But fast forward to the digital age, and researcher Laborious hypothesizes that playing modern video games is actually an extension of that exact same material consciousness. Video games are not just trivial pastimes to be dismissed. They are a modern, highly complex fusion of play and cultural craftsmanship. Sure, the mediums have changed from wood and stone to digital pixels and vast virtual worlds, but play fundamentally remains the vital engine of our innovation and our cultural expression.
So that brings us right back to our existential starting line. With only 4,000 weeks to live, how will you choose to play? Dr. Stuart Brown offers a really simple but profound piece of advice here. Open yourself up to being a beginner again. Look at your daily routines with totally fresh perspectives and actively cultivate the activities and relationships that genuinely nourish your soul. Play is not a detour from your adult responsibilities. It is the absolute essence of a life well lived. So I'm going to leave you with this challenge today. In the fast-moving, often overwhelming chaos of contemporary life, how are you going to intentionally stop, take a breath, and play on? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.